I'm going to talk a little bit about Cider Finder and what I've been up to the past few years here. I know it's been like 3 years, I think, since the last time I presented. I'm pretty sure Andre was still MC the last time I presented here in Iowa City, and it's definitely been a while since I presented it anywhere. I think Des Moines was my last time I talked to anyone really about what it is or what it does or that sort of thing. And, you know, I have learned a bit in the last 3 years or so. I've kind of traveled all over the U.S., gotten to go to some trade shows, to some competitions, and kind of see, what do cider makers want? What do they need out of an app? What do enthusiasts want out of this app that other apps, like Untapped for beer, has cider on it, but hearing from a lot of people, it's not working for them. They specifically would like a cider app, and so that's what I'm building. And so, for those of you unfamiliar with Cider Finder, it's an app and a community that I'm developing right now to bring together hard cider enthusiasts and hard cider makers. It's to increase the profile of cider and other cider-related beverages here in the U.S. currently, and hopefully in the future everywhere else all over the world. And I'll get into that a little bit more here in just a few minutes. There's a demand for this stuff all over the place, and it's not specifically just cider. It's things that are related to cider. There's perry that's made out of just pears. There's mead. There's cider, which is mead plus cider. And so there's all sorts of other, and that one of those pictures that I had back there with the million glasses on it, there's different distilled spirits that can come from cider. So there's all sorts of stuff that's going into this app that people who really love cider really love a lot of this other stuff too. And it's hard to find these things because many of these cider makers are just not big players. They're small volume producers. So they need an app like this. So over the past 3 years, I've kind of been exploring, well, what do cider makers want? What do they want out of this app? What do they want the cider enthusiasts to know about their facilities and about their products and that sort of thing? And then on the flip side, what do the enthusiasts want out of an app? Do they just want to keep track of what they're having? Do they want to find new stuff? Do they want education out of this? And I'm finding the answer is yes to pretty much everything. And one of the things I'm finding difficult to do as I'm developing this is to say, okay, we'll add that feature later, but we need to have a core product and be testing a core product and make sure everything is going according to plan at first here before we get into the weeds on a lot of, I want this feature, I want that feature, because you start getting all this feature creep and it just extends the lifetime of the project, and I just want to have something out the door. I'm also finding there's so many different varieties of ciders out there and different derivations of cider. Like I was saying, there's all these other related beverages that I'm finding, oh yeah, that should probably be on there too, because it's such a small segment of the market, but it's like 99% of it is being consumed by the people who will use this app. So probably should have it on the app as well. So it's been interesting to talk to people about that sort of thing. And during the pandemic, one of the silver linings, and I'll get to some other silver linings because we've had some during this year and a half of being online. I actually got a chance to talk to a lot of Canadian cider makers along the way, and they're desperate for something like this just because their system for selling alcoholic beverages is, believe it or not, more complicated than it is in some U.S. states. Even though they didn't have prohibition up there. So it's a very interesting market, and it's something that they would love to partner with us on that. And there could be great benefits in the future, kind of looking at the roadmap ahead, that partnering with cider makers, specifically Ontario and Quebec, that could benefit folks here in the U.S. And so because of that, the long-term business plan has changed, but only slightly. So still developing the app, but developing it as more of a community. The app is part of that community, but also other things, things like tastings, things like being at cider festivals and that sort of thing. But really, the roadmap starts with the app, and that's what I'm developing, and that's what we're slowly rolling people into the beta test for. But then it kind of diverges. So you've got this e-commerce track that I'm working on because, as we've seen during the pandemic, people like ordering stuff online and not going to a physical location. And the longer this goes on, people are just going to keep buying things online. And the great thing is, once you get people buying stuff online through your app, when you create an app where it's easy to just do that and things just appear at people's door, they're going to keep using your app and they're going to recommend your app to other people. And more people are going to start using your app and getting locked into that. And so you've got that e-commerce, and then eventually there are a few of us that still enjoy going to a bottle shop and seeing what is there and what they have in stock or what they can get. But understanding that a bottle shop is only a certain size. You can't just continually expand a building. You're stuck with whatever size storefront you have. So figuring out what's popular, and that'll help. The app will help, that sort of thing. But eventually having some small bottle shops here and there throughout the US and other countries as allowed. And then the other track that we're looking at through this off of the app is other apps for other different types of alcohols. So, what I've also been finding through 3 years of customer discovery here is that there are a lot of people who really love cider, and there are a lot of people who really love whiskey, and there are a lot of people who really love tequila, but there's not a ton of overlap. You pick your beverage and you usually stick with it. There's some people that might migrate between one or the other, but for the most part, people are in their silos and they like being in their silos. People that like whiskey just want to have all the different types of whiskey they can find. And so once Cider Finder is working the way it needs to work, it's not going to take that long to develop a whiskey finder or a bourbon finder or a tequila finder. It's a matter of just swapping some things out and making it work. And so, two tracks to this now: the e commerce track and the developing other apps from the base code of Cider Finder. And so, it's changed a little bit. I thought it was more of a straight line originally, but I'm finding it really is just kind of a branching tree. And so, that'll be a lot of fun as we keep going along on that. And so, some important dates I'm looking forward to that I'm hoping I meet, and I'm pretty sure I will. I hope. February 1st, 2022 is the beginning of CiderCon. It's actually out in Richmond, Virginia, coming up in February. That is a date I'd like to actually have this thing on app stores, even if it's still in an open beta. That is my deadline, to have this thing done and in open beta or completely done and launched. May 15th or thereabouts is the Great Lakes International Cider and Perry Competition up in Michigan. If they reset it to the normal date, it was in July this year because of why. At that point, hoping to have the e-commerce partners online and having people buying cider through the app, not just keeping track of it and looking stuff up, but actually buying things through the app and taking a cut of whatever people are buying through there. And then July 1st, which happens to be Canada Day, I'm hoping to have Canadian cider makers and cider enthusiasts online using the app, kind of possibly a closed beta, maybe an open beta up there, to get people to try the app, see if they can find stuff, start navigating that system up there, and as I work with my partners up there, see what we can do for that. So that's the update. We're still enrolling beta testers, so if you're not on the app just yet, head over to ciderfinder.co and put your email address in and get in the beta test. It's fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a rolling admission into the beta test, so I'm very gradually adding people right now. So if you've signed up, you will be added. You have not been forgotten. It's a slow slog. So. Before I get into other stuff, I do want to stop for questions. So if anyone has any questions, we'll do Cider Finder questions for about 10-15 minutes before I get into some other stuff.
Jay, who are the e-commerce partners? Are those the the producers of the cider, or?
So I've actually been approached by two different cider sellers that are just kind of startups themselves and want to get integrated with as many places as possible. So mostly working with them at first because it'll be easier if I can just kind of get it down to maybe two or three partners instead of working with like 100 cider makers to deal with e-commerce. It'll probably be easier, but eventually cider makers that aren't selling through any of these other platforms, we will then just sell directly from them. It'll be a direct link to them. So, does that answer your
Cool.
question?
Yeah, yeah. And how do you find those? I mean, is it just through your networking and stuff like that, just from your experience? And
Yeah, so it's been networking, and actually both of the e-commerce folks that I'm talking to actually approached me. They found us on social media and thought, "Hey, this is a really good idea," and so they got in touch with me, and I'm working with them. So it's been, believe it or not, I've done some networking, which is great because I got kind of got the ball rolling, and I've been able to ask questions and find out information about stuff. But a lot of the growth and interest has been through Instagram of all things. So definitely spending a lot more time on there than any other platform.
cool.
Hey Jay, that's super exciting. Thanks for presenting the update, especially kind of some of the new direction, a little bit of the pivot. Can you talk a little bit more, just one, what that was like from a discovery perspective, and then also almost from a, for lack of better terms, an ego perspective, like, hey, maybe I wasn't thinking about this the right way. How easy or hard was it to make that pivot?
It wasn't super difficult. Um, I mean, I went into it knowing that I'm a complete novice in the area, and I there are people that know a lot more about this industry than I do that I probably will never know as much as some people do. Um, and so it wasn't difficult, but it it was more of a just mixing things up than making it harder or it being difficult or that sort of thing. So um, it was just nice to be able to reorder and kind of say, okay, maybe I should focus on this rather than focusing on this at this time. So not terrible, I guess is the short answer.
Thanks.
Sure.
Just a little bit of follow up too on that. So, um, I'm just and the context where I'm coming from, just thinking about some of the things I'm working on with my innovation students right now, and
Mhm.
we're right in the process of defining the problem
Right.
and redefining the problem statement. So just kind of curious, did you explicitly almost like redefine the customer problem? I know you got the insights like that they tend to be a little bit more tribal around the type of beverage,
Mhm.
and that there's actually more opportunities as a platform for connection and commerce. But did you like explicitly kind of restate the problem or challenge or opportunity?
Yeah, so that's why I've kind of included the community part of it. Because originally that wasn't in there. It was mostly, oh, I'm just going to develop an app and people are going to do stuff and it's going to be great. Um, but yeah, kind of redefining it around, no, this is more of a community. This is a group of people who want to be, really want to share an experience over a shared like of a certain beverage. And so that's kind of where the changes were made to the problem statement.
Excellent, cool. Thanks. I appreciate the context.
Thank you.
And I know that you had kind of stated that your target audience is going to be obviously those who enjoy cider.
Right.
Um, a little deeper in that, do you have an idea of the exact type of client that you're looking for, or the exact type of downloader, if you will? I mean, are you looking to get into any of the commercial realm? So, and by that I mean, is there going to be wholesale type sales on your app for those who have more of a like an artsy sort of beverage options at their bar or taste house, if you will, or is it simply just, is it business to consumer or app to consumer?
So for the sales at first, it's going to be B2C, just because that's the fewest. I have to jump through the fewest legal hoops to do that. It's more of just being a middleman at that point. To do wholesale, to do B2B, involves a lot of paperwork and an attorney. So we're not at that point yet. That might be version 2.0 after 1.5 starts selling it through partners. Having a bottle shop eventually as part of this. Yes, I would like to be a distributor at some point, and it's something I have talked with other like cider makers and actually a few beer brewers that self distribute, and talking about some of the legal hoops and where, if I'd have to, I don't want to move headquarters out of Iowa, but if the paperwork is terrible, sometimes you have to. Um, I really don't want to though, because I like Iowa. I like being here. But yeah, there's B2C until I have a chance to jump through legal hoops. But yes, wholesaling and distributing is on the radar.
And I guess the only other follow up I have then is, can you make it clear to us how we can best help you? In other words, you're saying, hey, the help that I can use just from the average guy or the individual out while they're networking. Hey, what should I be looking to do other than subscribing and downloading your beta app or being your subscription? What type of help are you looking for, and how can I help you personally?
So yeah, downloading the app, that's definitely helpful. And like you did with the connection you gave me, anyone who knows anyone, I'm always looking to talk to more cider makers maybe that are kind of under the radar, that maybe do some of the other types of beverages like mead or cider or perry or calvados or any of these other related apple or pear based beverages. Because I'm always looking for more connections, because there are going to be a lot of cider makers that I didn't have on my list that I got 3 years ago that have popped up in the last 3 years that I just don't know about, and I'm not going to know about them unless I have a connection. So, really, what you Micah have done for me is definitely a lot of help. But if anyone else knows any cider makers, like you have a favorite cider or a favorite mead, a favorite distilled apple beverage that you like, please tell me about it. Tell me who's making it, or where you got it, or that sort of thing, and then I can do the legwork from there and see if I can get them on the app so that so the experience is better for everyone.
So Jay, this is Eric. It's really cool.
Thank you.
How did you get interested in cider in the first time? What's a little bit about just backstory on your interest in these types of beverages, and
Sure.
just like curious a little bit more to see what motivated you.
So, I always really liked craft beer, and it got to a point where I just kind of got tired of breweries pumping out 10 different IPAs. Like, I'm sure a lot of you can think of at least one brewery that's just pumping out all IPAs, and it just gets boring after a while. And so I was like, okay, I want something else. And I always really liked, over in Europe, they have something called lambic. It's made by specific brewers in Belgium. Those are the only ones. It's like champagne in France. It's a designated name for certain beverage that comes from certain breweries. So really liked that. Really liked Goza, and so I kind of got into sour beers. But then I drink more than a couple of those in an evening, and I'd have heartburn all night, just because that's what those do. And so I thought, okay, there's got to be something better here. And so I happened to start checking out the cider section. I thought, okay, I like kind of fruity beverages, but got one that ended up was a dry cider, and I thought, oh, this is kind of wine-ish. This is kind of, it's not that like fruit bomb in your mouth sort of thing. And I thought, this is kind of a cool idea. And so what ended up happening, I started this at a startup weekend, and the original idea was like, I want to find my favorite drinks at a bar without leaving my house. I want to see what the bars have on tap. And people are doing that, and the beer app area is just full. And so I thought, oh, why don't we try cider? Why don't we see what they're doing for that? And saw that this new beverage that I was finding more of around here had like no representation online. And so it was kind of my love for trying new things, and that's what led me to Cider and eventually this app.
How are you doing the development?
I am doing it myself very slowly. The app itself is a progressive web app, and so it's essentially a website with an app wrapper, so the phone thinks it's an app. That's down the road. I'm planning to hire native developers, but to get this thing out the door at first, lowest cost as possible, I'm using the web development skills that I have to push it out the door.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the right way to do it, I think.
Did you talk to Julien, who had the line call app? I say his name Julien because he's French, so I have to say it with an accent. But
Sure.
he was at the Entrefest. I don't know if you talked to him at all. Just a thought for networking purposes. He may have some good insight on how to help develop an app. I'm sure you probably chatted with him.
I actually did not have a chance to chat with him. If you have his contact info, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. He actually just moved out to Chicago.
Okay.
But I'd be more than happy to connect you with him. I know he'd probably be more than happy to have a conversation. Yeah. So I'll reach out to him.
That would be awesome. Thank you. Probably will take one more question, then we're going to move on to part 2. So it's not just Cider Finder today. There's other stuff involved too. So anyone have one last minute question?
So I actually noticed yesterday for the first time that a cider on tap, and that was at New Hyatt Regency in the bar there.
Mhm.
As part, they had a cherry rhubarb cider.
Okay.
So is this something like that consumers will be able to find local locations that have something on draft?
Yes. So at first we're focusing specifically on sending people to cider makers tap rooms. But eventually we're going to start including bars, restaurants, festivals, that sort of thing. I'm going to try to pilot maybe 1 or 2 festivals next year and see how that goes. But yeah, eventually it's getting people to really start enjoying it from the source, and then when they go to their local restaurant or bar or hotel or whatever, saying, "Hey, you only have one cider. You ought to have like 2 or 3 on," and that sort of thing. So um, that's it. That's also on the roadmap.
Awesome.
So go ahead. I think he's done. Okay. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to switch gears a little bit here. Talk about entrepreneurial ecosystems, because this is something I've been focusing on the last couple weeks. This is kind of the other half of what I do here and there when I'm not working on the Cider Finder app. And if you hadn't heard, this is my last day as the face of 1MC Iowa City. That's kind of why we chose my birthday to do this. Had we had this in person, I actually brought a bunch of cider back from Colorado, and I was planning to share that. But maybe next time. Maybe the next time we're in person, I'll bring some stuff, and we'll have some fun. But this is my last day as the face of the chapter. I'm gradually phasing my work out because I've been at the helm for 3 years. It's time for someone else to stand up and be the leader. And there's no point in monopolizing the chapter. I'm not trying to monopolize the chapter, but I wanted to guide us at least as far as I could through the pandemic. Thinking we'd be done with the pandemic a little bit earlier than this and be back in person. But since we are not, and I don't know when we'll have 1MC in person again, it's time to step aside, and we're going to kind of rotate through. Like last week, Matt was nice enough to fill in for me because I was out and about doing stuff and wasn't able to be online. But we're going to have a fun rotating panel of MCs the next few months here at 1MC Iowa City. I'm going to be on the rotation, so you'll see me a few more times. But my co-organizers are great people, and we wouldn't have gotten through this had we not all pitched in and worked on this together. So I want to thank everyone for their help through all of this. I'm glad to be a part of this to kind of help guide us through this, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. the next few months, seeing who loves emceeing and who maybe wants to step up as the permanent full timer here in the future. So I'm hoping this is kind of the beginning of a long journey of entrepreneurial ecosystem building. And because I am running other stuff, I'm going to continue running Iowa City Open Coffee and Startup Weekend Iowa City and all sorts of things. But there's no cohesive way to bring all of those things together right now. So I'm going to build one. And I'm calling it Iowa Entrepartners. This is the first time I've really talked about this publicly. It's good. It's just kind of a. I don't have a logo for it yet. I'll put a new logo here eventually if I give this presentation, this part of the presentation again somewhere. Maybe add like an explosion or something. It'll be fun. So what is this? What is Iowa Entrepartners? So it's a nonprofit organization that I'm developing. It's going to be home for a number of entrepreneurial events and resources. So it's going to be home for Iowa City Open Coffee, Startup Weekend Iowa City, Startup Weekend Iowa Online, something that I'm talking with folks across the state planning for next year called Iowa Startup Week, possibly some new evening social hours. Actually ran into some folks from TAI and saying, hey, it'd be really cool if Tech Brew were an evening thing again. And so maybe partnering with them on that or taking that idea and getting something around it. So it's a new initiative that I'm hoping will be a way to kind of cut down the administrative nonsense that goes into a lot of this stuff. Because a lot of Startup Weekend Iowa City, like you see the event, that's the public facing thing. But there's 3 months of work and fundraising and administrative stuff that goes into putting on something like that. Well, what if we had an organization that was already built and would do a lot of that heavy lifting, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem builders could just ecosystem build and not have to deal with a lot of the BS behind the scenes. So I found there's a gap in resources for first-time entrepreneurs, and there's really no permanent home for a lot of what I call front door activities. So what gets people into the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So One MC Iowa City is one of those things. Luckily, ICAD does a great job kind of being the home for that. But a lot of the other stuff right now is just kind of adrift. There's no real home for it. So the resources and information I found are scattered and they're siloed. Like government agencies have stuff and foundations have stuff. And there's no clearinghouse for this information. And I get the same sort of questions from entrepreneurs all the time that are just starting out. It's like, well, where do I go? What do I do? X, Y, and Z. I'm hoping to fix this by having this specific organization that is specifically just focused on this sort of stuff. So once I get this nonprofit status, it's just a lot of IRS paperwork and all of that. Again, involving attorneys and all that sort of thing. So once we get that nonprofit status, the plan is to start fundraising, get a pot of money sitting there so that I can then hire some sort of administrator to do a lot of the bookkeeping and the paperwork and all of this stuff, because I hate doing that stuff. And I am the one that ends up having to do that stuff all the time. And I want to just hire someone to deal with this so I don't have to deal with it anymore. And then once we have that infrastructure in place, start getting the library of resources, have someone managing essentially a bank account so that events can start tapping into this bank account and organizational structure, then begin funding statewide events. Things like startup weekends all over the state and Startup Week and any other crazy ideas that people say, hey, we need $1,000 for this. It's like, okay, well, let us put our name on this thing and it's your event. You do your thing. We will cut you a check for $1,000 to help you out. Because in kind of the impetus for this that I found that has been another silver lining to the pandemic is that I'm actually talking to people in other startup communities throughout the state. There's, for whatever reason, the last few years before the pandemic, everything was getting all siloed and people were creating fiefdoms and stuff was starting to break down. It just wasn't working the way it should work as a statewide entity. And because the population of Iowa is only 3.1 million, we need to work together to compete with the larger cities that completely surround us, the Kansas Cities, the Minneapolises, the Omahas, the Indianapolises. They can do all their stuff all in one place because they have 1 million+ people in one place. We don't have that here. And if we work together as a state, we can run rings around a lot of these larger cities because we have all the parts for a functional entrepreneurial ecosystem in Iowa. We just we just weren't working together the way we needed to. And so now is the time for this. Now is the time to start doing a lot of these statewide initiatives. Startup Weekend Iowa Online was kind of the trial balloon back in April to see how this would work, how it would work across different cities. It was amazing. It worked out so well. It worked out so well that we're going to have another one in January. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But now's the time to start doing these things. Now that we're kind of coming out of this, people are clamoring for in-person events. Now's the time for this. And so, before I get to any other stuff, I don't know why that's doing that. Before I get to any other stuff, I do want to take a few questions on Iowa Entrepartners and the entrepreneurial ecosystem stuff. So, any questions?
How do we get involved, Jay, with this?
That I will actually touch on in just a few minutes. I have a number, like you probably saw the thing. I've got several big asks coming up. There are going to be a lot of projects that people can get on board with here or there. With the exception of Startup Weekend Iowa Online, they're all going to be in-person events. So if you are desperate to be around other human beings, now is the time to get involved and start planning this stuff for 2022. So we'll get to that in just a little bit.
Hey, Jay, congrats. So not really a question, just wanted to say this is pretty exciting. So yeah, looking forward to where this goes.
Thank you. Yeah, it'll be great. And it'll be great to work with folks all over the state and just getting everyone energized about this stuff. Because as we're coming out of this last year and a half, it's time to start working on this stuff. And maybe I'm the guy to lead this stuff, or at least maybe I'll start it and hand it off to someone else. But I want to see us succeed, and I want to see us succeed as a state. And that's again like what I was saying. I love Iowa. I've lived here almost my entire life, and I really don't see myself living anywhere else. So I want us to succeed here.
Let's hear more.
So I guess I will go on and give the big asks, because I know this was kind of it's not as exciting as Cider Finder. Entrepreneurial ecosystem building, I guess I have as much of a passion for that as I do for Cider and for building the Cider community and that sort of thing. So I do thank you all for indulging me for a few minutes on some of this stuff. But what's next? What's coming up? Iowa City Open Coffee. Now this has been my baby even longer than 1 Million Cups Iowa City has even been a thing. This project was started years ago by other folks who have since left the area, and I picked Iowa City Open Coffee up like 4.5 years ago, and basically it was DOA when I got it. That no one was showing up. It was doing its thing. Maybe we'd have one person show up, and so I was just yakking with someone for an hour. And then the location of 1MC kept changing before we got our own chapter. I feel like we're kind of in another little bit of a rebuilding phase right now. And so I want to bring this back in person. We need in-person events. And so Iowa City Open Coffee is going to start being in person again the same day as 1MC starts again in 2022. So location to be determined. Don't have a location yet, but it will be in person. 1MC will still be online, but we will be in person. And then from 8 to 9 a.m. on Wednesday, January 19th. And then we'll all just tune into 1MC at the end of the hour. So let me know if you'd like to help co-organize or host future open coffee events. I'm looking for a location. I'm looking for co-organizers. It's not that hard. Basically, you just get a coffee and talk to someone. It's really not that hard to organize an open coffee. It's like the easiest thing you could possibly do. So if you're interested, let me know, because I'm not going to be able to be there every week, but I want it to be happening every week. So I'm going to want 1 or 2 people to help me kind of carry that torch. The next thing after that, Startup Weekend Iowa Online. It's fun. It's only a 2-day event. It's a little bit different than the in-person ones. So I know some of you have been to in-person startup weekends that start Friday evening and you're working with your team at a table basically until Sunday afternoon. How we did Startup Weekend Iowa Online back in April, we decided to shorten it from Friday. We'll just have it going from Friday afternoon, evening-ish to Saturday evening. So it's about 26 hours instead of the 54. Because people just get tired of being at their computer all the time. And we found that if people are really working hard on this for the 26 hours, the full, even if they only take a nap for a couple hours in the middle of the night, they're putting out stuff that's just as good as if they're sitting there, forced to sit there the entire weekend. So January 21st, 22nd of next year, it's free. So sign up for it. It's, what are you going to be doing that weekend? It's probably going to be cold and snowy. You're not going to want to go anywhere. It's after the holidays. The kids are back in school. Why not join us for Startup Weekend? You can win some awesome prizes, come up with a neat idea, and we'll have more details on that when the tickets are available starting in December on what platforms we're going to be using and that sort of thing. So the ticket link will be available soon, and I will advertise that here at 1MC Iowa City. So keep a lookout for that. Another ask, Startup Weekend Iowa City. I don't know why it keeps doing that. That's really weird. There it goes. Startup Weekend Iowa City 2022. It'll be mid-July again. Of course, I'm not working on that yet because it's pretty far out. But I do need co-organizers for that. I'm hoping we have a partnership that works as well as the EdTech collaborative was this past year. It was a lot of fun having an education-themed startup weekend, but don't know what we're doing this year. Not going to start planning that until March, but I've got a link there, and I'm going to put it in the chat as well. I'm going to copy all these links over to the chat. If you're interested in helping out with that, it's really easy to organize a startup weekend. The basic areas you have to do, it's mostly you get funding, people, and venue. Venue has been merged the past few years, so long as the numbers are down where they can be, it'll be at merge. Otherwise, we'll figure something out. But it's mostly the getting people to show up and making sure you're breaking even at least. And so need people who really like fundraising. If you like asking people for money or for prizes, I don't like doing that, so I would love to have someone help me with that. And then if you have connections with people who you think would be good mentors during the weekend or good judges at the end of the weekend, I could always use a people finder person. So if you fill either of those roles, fill out the form and I will get back to you when we get closer to March. And then one of the final asks, Iowa Startup Week 2022. Probably going to happen a year from November, so November of 22. I'm going to have just a quick Zoom meeting with anyone who fills out the form on November 17th at 12 noon, just to kind of tell them about what on earth Startup Week is, how can they help out, and that sort of thing. I've been to several Startup Weeks now, and I have a blast at every single one of them. They're a fun event. They're free. They're open to the community. It's not like other conventions where you're paying $300 and it's kind of it's its own thing, which that's fine. That's what you expect from a convention. But this is more of a community-led event, one of those front door things that brings people in to startup ecosystems. So I'll put this link in the chat as well if you're interested in helping out with the first statewide Startup Week event next year. And then if you want to see where I'm going, those are the things I'm going to be doing the next few months. There's some tickets left for the Young Entrepreneur Convention up in Ames. You go to yeconvention.com. They have their speaker list up there already. It's just one day. It's just on Saturday the 30th. I think it starts at 8 a.m. up at the ISU campus. I'm going to be in Des Moines the night before, one, so I don't have to drive for 3 hours first thing Saturday morning. But two, just in case the weather decides to get nasty that time of year, as it sometimes it does. So I will be there unless we get like a foot and a half of snow and we can't leave the house. So it should be a lot of fun. And then a couple streaming options. November 7th will be Alaska Startup Weekend Alaska's demo day that I will be emceeing. So check that out. You can also check out their Startup Week. I think they're having a lot of their stuff online. So if you're interested in what on earth they're doing way up there in Alaska, check that out. It starts November 7th and then goes that whole week. And then I'll be down in San Antonio, Texas for a startup weekend down there, and pretty sure they're going to live stream the demo day of that again. Don't have the link for that, of course, because they haven't told me yet. So that would be December 12th if you're interested to see what that startup weekend ends up producing. So that's the ecosystem stuff. Again, if you're interested in beta testing, ciderfinder.co. I'm going to put all these links in the chat. So if you're interested in helping that or you just want to keep in touch, just plug your email address into the website and I'll be in touch there. And that's all I have. Thank you all for indulging me for an hour. I know this was a lot of stuff. Kind of my farewell thing. I wish this could have been in person, but I understand why it's not. So I'll take any final questions. We've probably got about 5 to 10 minutes for any more questions. And I'll put those links in the chat. So I'm opening it up now. Any other questions?
Just to thank you, Jay. My gosh,
you.
you do so much for the community, and
Thank you.
you care a lot, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. That's one of the things that's been great to see folks who have shown up at stuff and have gotten really
I
into
echo that sentiment.
What?
I said I echo that sentiment. Thank you for all you've been doing, and I'm excited to see what this new venture looks like.
It should be fun. I'm hoping a lot of you are going to be along for the ride, just to see where it goes and maybe help
Yeah, Jay,
guide me along on that journey. So thank you.
One of the reasons I've continued to come is I've enjoyed the way you've run each of the sessions and what you're doing. So definitely help out any way I can, and love to follow what you're doing. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you. Thank you
Look
so
forward
much.
to working with you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I agree with everyone. You, since I joined Jay, it's been great. So
Thank you. No, I've really enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed meeting everyone who comes on here, and Eric, having you over from Chicago, and having you here pretty much every week. It's been amazing to see the kind of the reach we've had, and that's why I say it's not goodbye. This is just kind of the beginning of a new chapter in a larger book. So looking forward to maybe coming back again as just as a civilian and kind of talking about what we're doing with Iowa Entrepartners in the future. And Cider Finder will kind of be out of the range. Usually we have businesses that are less than 5 years old present here, and Cider Finders getting toward the edge of that, but Iowa Entrepartners definitely will come back for a refill in a couple of years here once we start funding some stuff and start making things great. So looking forward to that. Any other questions before we open things up for community announcements?
Jay, the really important question, what are your plans for the rest of your birthday today?
So a lot of work to do, and then shuttling my kids over to dance class this afternoon and evening. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. I'm gonna have birthday cake and I'll do all that fun stuff. Take the day off tomorrow. Have the birthday observed maybe tomorrow. But yeah, I'm enjoying today, and I'm gonna enjoy tomorrow, and it's a good day.
Not really a question, but get in touch with me about getting Principal or myself to sponsor the coffee for the open coffees, because I don't know if it's going to be at coffee shops or somewhere else. If we need to bring it in, then we can sponsor in the coffee at those events.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll be perfect. And that's kind of the thing with a lot of this stuff. It's mostly just finding companies that would be willing to just throw us a few dollars for this, that, or the other thing. Not huge asks. It's a lot of very small asks. But that would be great. I'll let you know. I'll talk to you more offline.